Welcome back, Colin, to the show again. It's good to talk to you again this morning, and we're going to talk about the digital detox component of Grand to Grand. So, how are you doing this morning?
Great. I feel very well indeed, Derek, and it's lovely to see you again this morning.
Thank you. I think that was a compliment. Even though we are communicating via the internet and looking at screens today, we're going to talk about digital detox. And I find this component of Grand to Grand really interesting because the race has been around for so long, and the digital detox aspect of Grand to Grand has been huge since the beginning. And here, 12 years later or so, almost everybody has a smartphone. And I think the digital detox aspect of Grand to Grand aged really well. So how did you guys come up
Mhm.
with that idea for like digital detox at your race?
Well, that's a great point, actually, Derek, because when we originally conceived of the race, it was very much about going to be about being back to nature. We wanted to give people an adventure in the desert. I mean, unlike most races, it takes a whole week to progress across the course in the Colorado Plateau. So we really wanted to give people an adventure to make it all the way through the 171 miles. Um, but one of the things that we're proudest of is that since the very first year, we've actually provided a full-blown digital detox for all our participants, and that wasn't originally what we'd intended to go out to. We wanted to build the best race, the best managed race in many aspects. But what has become very clear over the years as people have become more and more addicted to their screens and their smartphones is that we're providing a really great digital detox for the week, which is very, very important for people now.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting how, like, we're going to go jump into the numbers a little bit later here in a second, but just how everybody is on their smartphones all the time. Like, we wake up and instantly we just check our phones. Before we go to
Hmm.
bed, we're on our phones reading something or scrolling social media, and half the time you're just doom scrolling, and it's nothing really beneficial and probably detrimental. And out at Grand to Grand, it's like, even if you do have a smartphone, like you don't really have cell service. The areas are so remote, like you're not really going to have any sort of reception out there. So it's like
Hmm.
everybody kind of detoxes, even if you are like staff or running the race.
Well, that's right, and we've had it in our rules since the very beginning uh, that smartphones are prohibited on the course and at the race, and it was really less about a digital detox at the time and more about the experience for our runners. We wanted our runners to get there and really experience this back to nature and conversing with their GTG family during the week. And we knew that if they did have their phones with them, they'd be continually texting, checking social media, they'd be on different communication groups, and we didn't want them to do that. And we also didn't want them to uh, irritate other people because you know how it is. If you're doing something and a phone rings and then somebody's having a one-sided conversation with a phone, it's actually kind of irritating. So, we wanted people to really focus on the race and the other competitors and making friends. So that was really the concept behind banning phones in the race. And also, another aspect for banning phones was we really wanted to really limit technology in the race so that people could really feel um, the sense of adventure, that they weren't relying on technology to get from the start to the finish of the race over the whole week, and that they were really relying on their own wits to find their way, even though the course is extremely well marked. You have to pay attention to the marking on the course, and there was no backup for them in the form of a Garmin device or a smartphone that they could just default to, and that was important. We felt for the experience as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, like something that we all default to, because I've noticed this. And I was talking to a friend about this the other day. We are just talking about phones. We had a really long drive from Southern California up to Utah. and we were just chatting about how like how integral like smartphones are in society now, where it's like, okay, like we got to get to this place, so we're gonna map it. And I was thinking like when I moved to a new city a few years ago, I was like, I didn't know how to get anywhere, so I mapped everything. And one day I was like, I'm not going to use my phone today. I'm just going to go. And how much longer it took me, because even though I'd done that route a million times, I'd mapped it every single time. Then having to
Mm-hmm.
just rely on like how you should navigate like without a phone, it was really hard, and it took me a lot longer than I thought it would. And so it's like we use almost like a smartphone as a crutch. It's almost like this
Mm-hmm.
handicap that we have to do everything, and it's not always beneficial because we're just kind of we're not using our brains to their full capacity, so we're not really challenging ourselves in like this really like minor way. But then also, like you're saying, it's like it's just such a better experience when you're like with somebody and you're just not on your phone. You can actually have a like a discussion, and you can navigate things by using your own intuition and skill sets.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I grew up before smartphones, obviously, and we were at school taught how to use maps, how to orienteer. We would go out with the British Army, and we'd be put up into the Highlands of Scotland with two other groups of three of us, and basically they'd say, right, you've got to get from this spot, and you've got the whole day, and you've got to reach this other spot here. It might be 20 miles away or something, and you're basically just given a map and a compass, and you've got to figure out the best way to get there. And that was great. That really taught you some life skills. Whereas people now, they just go onto Google Maps or whatever it is and just follow the dot on the screen, and they're not learning any life skills. And you're continually hearing stories about technology getting it wrong, and they take people down all sorts of dangerous ways, and they get into all sorts of trouble, including dying in certain cases, because they've not used common sense. They might be told to go down a certain way, and they probably look at it and think, "Are you sure this is right?" But they're so um, addicted to technology, and so they've been told that technology will always be right, that they will just blindly follow what the technology tells them to do instead of using their common sense. And unfortunately, that's why some people get into real trouble.
Yeah, and just a quick like experience, not for myself, but it was a news story from a few years ago, out on the Arizona Strip, actually, kind of near the Grand Canyon where the Grand de Grand starts. There was a woman that went out there and she was navigating, I think, to the South Rim or the North Rim via Google Maps. And she went down a road and then down another road, then a 4x4 road and some rental car. And she got stuck for a few days, and it took like search and rescue a long time to find her, and she almost died. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's like she relied on the technology like without any just like, and I don't want to sound like demeaning, but like no common sense, where she just followed the route because that's what technology was saying to do. And she
Mm-hmm.
almost died because of that. Where if she would have taken a step back and been like, oh, I'm in a rental car on a 4x4 road that's not paved, like she would have been like, okay, I should probably just turn around and go home or find a different route because this is not working. So like this reliance on technology it's just not always a good thing.
Yeah, and that's so that all relates to the digital detox
Mm-hmm.
experience. We want to give people that break for just 1 week out of 52 weeks a year, um, just to experience what it's like without your smartphone, to just get that whole total experience where you're away from being connected, where people can't get hold of you, where you aren't using your spare time to try and connect with people, and you're having to use own your own wits and your own brain to figure things out. And you tend to find that it's very cathartic by the end of the week. Maybe this is a good time to tell you that anecdote about that participant, the CEO who signed up, or was going to sign up a few years ago. He got in touch with Tess actually and said, "Look, I really would love to do your race, but I notice that you don't allow smartphones for the week." He said, "Unfortunately, that's not possible for me. I'm a really important person. I'm a CEO of this company, and I have to be connected all the time." Um, and we said to him, well, unfortunately, even though you are a CEO and you're an important person, our rule is that you cannot bring your smartphone with you. It's just one of the rules. And he says, okay, that's a pity. We didn't hear from him for about a week or two. And then he gets in touch with us again and he says, okay, I'm signing up. I've managed to find people who are going to take care of my job for the week I'm away. And I'm not going to have a smartphone with me. So we said, great, I think you'll enjoy it. Anyway, at the end of the week, he had the best time and he came up to thank us. And he said it was the best experience he had. Simply, he never thought he'd ever get away from his phone for the week. And he learned a lot. He learned that he could actually get away from his company. He could actually delegate a lot of tasks that he hadn't done before. And clearly, this was a very detoxing experience for him to be able to actually make that decision, which if we hadn't actually forced him to, he would never have done it.
Yeah, that is like super interesting. It's cool to see that one, he was able to like he wanted to do the race so badly that he like made like I guess when there's a will, there's a way, right? And so then he did that. And he was probably super nervous. Like I don't know the exact guy, but I'm assuming he was probably like kind of stressed out for a couple of days. But then by the end of the week, it's just like, oh, I needed that more than I realized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. I think a lot of people are kind of stressed out when they put their smartphones away in their bags and we hold it for them in Kanab. I think that first 24 hours they're a little bit nervous about it.
Yeah, just real quick, can we go over exactly what the rule is when it comes to smartphones? Because it's like people obviously don't have them at camp, but like, what is the rule for like smartphones and watches and that sort of thing as far as navigation and everything goes?
Well, there's actually quite a detailed set of rules there with regard to all electronic devices. So we always encourage our participants to really understand what those are, and they're very detailed. They tell you which devices you can take with you, which ones you can't, and if you're using them in the wrong way, what penalties you will get. So it's they're quite stringent, quite strict, the rules. But you're right when you said earlier about 80% of the course doesn't have a cell phone signal anyway, so they wouldn't be able to communicate with their devices. But we certainly don't want people to be doing that even in the areas where you do get a signal. So we do allow people to take their iPhones or smartphones with them on the course. And the purpose of that is that they can actually take photographs, they can take videos, but they cannot transmit. So this is for their own souvenirs for the course. So if you're maybe taking a journal for the week and you want to record yourself or special moments of you and on the course, then by all means you can do that. But what we don't want is people making calls, people getting on social media, etc. And we do monitor these things. We've got lots of people there at the checkpoints and at the campsites watching what's going on. So we have monitored people in the past who've done things, and they do get penalties. But the answer at the end of the day is go on to the website, look at our rules and regulations as to what you can and cannot do. But as an overall rule, you cannot use anything which will either record the course or will transmit. So you can take photographs, you can take short videos, but they're only for your record. We do have professional photographers out there taking photographs. They're going to take much better photographs than anyone will be able to take themselves. And of course, they're taking a view out in very unique locations. So we always encourage people to get those packages rather than their own photographs. But by all means, take their iPhones with them. But the other thing, of course, is that there are no charging facilities. So even if you had your iPhone out there, you're not going to be able to go into camp. Again, that's a penalty. I think you might get disqualified if you try to use the organization's facilities for charging. I think you'd probably get disqualified from the race. So you're probably going to lose, unless you really only use the phone for taking the occasional photograph, you're going to run out of battery power pretty quickly. So it's not going to last you the whole week. I mean, some people do take solar panels with them, but that's just an extra weight. At the end of the day, you're trying to minimize the weight you carry. So do you really want to take a solar panel with you? I mean, that's a very small number. I would say less than 5% of the participants over the years have actually taken small solar panels with them, and they probably regret it at the end of the week anyway. So, yeah, that's that's it as far as the rules are concerned.
It definitely makes a lot of sense. And while you were speaking, it reminded me of, I think it was the first or second year I was out at Grand de Grand, and we are at Camp 2, like right at the base of the Vermilion Cliffs, which is just jaw-droppingly beautiful. It's just so incredible there. And there were a couple students out there from the local university, and there's no service out there. Like there's no service for hours when you're out there, like no matter which way you drive. And these girls were just like laying in their tent and just scrolling on their phones. And we asked them, we're just like, what are you doing? Like, do you have cell phone service? Like, no. It's like, well, what are you doing? Like, oh, we're just like looking at stuff. It's like, well, you could be talking to your friend that's sitting right next to you, or the people here in camp. So like, even if you were to like you're saying, you bring a phone and you bring a solar panel, all these things, like one, it's just very cumbersome to bring all that extra stuff. But then two, it's like you're kind of losing out on the experience of being in these magical locations with these really cool people. And so I guess that kind of leads into this question of like, why do you personally think it's like so important to like just detox? I know we kind of touched on it already, but like let's dive into that a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I'd say that maybe I should add before we talk about that is that my recommendation to people would be to just leave your smartphone in your luggage and cab. Don't even take it with you. So you're not even tempted to use it. And just then your focus is entirely on the race, entirely on the experience and making friends, new friends in the GTG family. And that's how you will maximize the benefit from the whole week. So don't even, as I said, you will be taking amazing photographs of you, much better than you could take yourself. You're not going to miss out on anything. And there might be a very small minority of people, maybe if you've got a media assignment where you want to keep a record of things. But other than that, if you don't have an obligation to do sort of media stuff, then I would say leave the smartphone in your luggage and nab. Well, what I've been researching since you suggested that I talk about the digital detox, which is I think it's a very unique experience for races around the world. I think if anything, races are getting, more technology inclusive. They're providing people with trackers, or people are taking their own trackers. People are taking their own phones, etc. So if anything, a lot of races around the world are becoming more intrusive as far as technology is concerned. We decided right at the beginning we're going to be true to the back to nature approach and never allow more technology into the race. And that's always been our ethos to do that. And we can see it in our day-to-day lives how people have become super addicted to phones. And everyone can see your experience with your partner, with your friends, other people. You can see how much overuse there is of smartphones and screens. So I've done a bit of research into this since you asked me to talk about the digital detox. And, according to some research out there, the average American now spends nearly 7 hours each day staring at screens, and teenagers even more. It's almost 9 hours a day. So that's a whopping 2,500 hours a year that the average American looks at a screen. That's more time than you be at work. So that just shows you how much people are addicted to their smartphones. And, it is something people don't think of it as an addiction if you just talk about it, but it is. And if you look at some of the definitions of what addictions are, they talk about things like, oh, if it's a drug, it's hazardous to use. So, for example, while you're driving, so the same way as if you're intoxicated or under an influence, it can be equally dangerous if you're trying to, look at a smartphone or answer messages while you're driving. Look at how it affects your social function. So, instead of talking to people, you're giving up your social life to spend more time on a phone and isolating yourself. You're not really communicating with people. If people feel withdrawal if they don't have their phone, if you go out for a walk and you've left your phone at home, people think, oh my God, I've left my phone at home. Do I have to go back for it? Well, the answer is, enjoy your walk without the phone. People, if anything, have been increasing their screen time, and that's typical of addiction. When you can't get enough of it, you want more and more of it. And that's what people are doing. They're increasing the amount of screen time. Being unable to cut down on use, because, if they're saying, oh, well, reduce the amount of time, well, they can't. If anything, they're only increasing it. And a lot of people are, giving up their hobbies because they'd rather be spending time on their phone, getting the dopamine hits from all the different apps that are on their phone, rather than actually spending time on things that have got nothing to do with their phone, their hobbies or favorite sports. So another interesting statistic was the smartphones were introduced about 17 years ago. That's when the first iPhone hit the market. And now 97% of the population has a smartphone. So it's really taken over. I think I read somewhere that even at its peak, smokers in the US, I think in the late 50s, the maximum number of smokers was about 50%. So smartphones have become much more addictive than even cigarettes were in its heyday. So, what other things are a problem with phones? Well, it's been proven by experts that it's one of the reasons for the mental health crisis that we're seeing today. Research has shown that mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, OCD can be linked to overuse of smartphones. A digital detox from those smartphones can really lead to clarity and relaxation. And this next one is one that Tess has really been drilling into me recently, which is the use of the blue light from screens, rather. So, I think people are having more and more problems with sleep these days, either getting to sleep or staying asleep, not waking up. And it's been proven through research that a big cause of that is the fact that the blue light emitted from screens prevents the release of melatonin. So the blue light actually fools the body into thinking that it's daylight. And so, what people should be doing is at least 2 hours before they go to sleep at night is really turning off anything to do with digital screens. That's not happening. Clearly people are not doing that, and that's affecting their sleep. The digital detox will promote your sleep, which is really important. Eye health is another one. Looking at screens for too long strains your eyes, causes headaches, causes actually vision impairment, macular degeneration. So again, a digital detox will give a rest to your eyes. Focus on productivity can really be helped by giving yourself a digital detox, by not being so absorbed with the time on the screens. And another really important one are our relationships, because having a digital detox will really give you the clarity to get your relationships back on track, because your listening will improve. You're no longer just relating to the screen, but you're actually listening to other human beings, which is really important. And then the last one is really physical health, because you're no longer hunched over a screen, which is causing problems not only to your vision but also to your posture and your well-being. So those are some of the major benefits that you get from a digital detox.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good points that you made there, and one that like really came to my mind, and maybe because it's semi-fresh from Grand to Grand last year, but Anastasia, the photographer, and I like we spent a lot of time together out at the race because we're essentially doing the same thing, like me shooting video, her shooting photos, and like she had never been to Kanab before, so I was kind of showing her the area and around and everything, and like I'd met her briefly at a race in June of that year, and but we didn't really talk much. It was more just like an introduction. And then spending that entire week with her, it's like, wow, like we talked about so many different things from like work to life to like talking about her family, like where she's from, my family, where I'm from, all these different things. And we like rarely were even on our phones because like one, we just couldn't. And two, it's like we just had a good time talking to each other about things. And now I consider her a really good friend because like we spent that whole week together just talking about stuff. It's like, and so like when you break away from your phone, like you are able to build relationships. Like your health is a lot better. Like you're saying, you sleep better at night. And like I think everyone sleeps really well at Grand to Grand, partly because like one, they're exhausted from doing things all day, but also the blue light thing and not being stimulated by things that are just kind of making your mind race all the time. So there's just like you're saying, just like countless benefits to like stepping away from your phone and screens and stuff, whether it's at a race or in your normal everyday life.
Yeah, and people have lost the art of conversation, I find. And what we give them for a week is the ability to socially converse with all the other participants and the volunteers and staff at the event. So, it's almost like for some people, it's like speed dating, because they're going to spend more time with other participants in that week than they will with their, in total overall hours, than their best friend for a whole year, perhaps, because it's a very intense experience for a week where you're with people 24/7 and they're experiencing the same highs and lows as you are. So you're making friends very quickly and making them, you're having very deep relationships which last beyond the race itself. So when they go all back to their homes, it doesn't matter which city it is. It could be in America, it could be in Europe, it could be Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, wherever. You retain those friendships, which are very powerful things, which you wouldn't normally do in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like a lot of these principles you're talking about could be applied just even like on training runs and things too. Like, say you're training for Grand to Grand. It's not like you have to not use a smartphone for the year before you do the race or whatever, but like going out on a run and maybe not bringing your phone or putting your phone in your pack and on airplane mode and then not checking it is a great way to just, one, still have that safety mechanism there, like just in case something happens or to take a picture or something. But then also it's like, if you're not like, I don't know, I've done this a lot of times where like I go run with my phone and I'm like constantly stopping, like I'll take pictures and I'm like, oh, well, now my phone's out. So I'm going to check Instagram. I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't need to check Instagram every 30 minutes. Like I need to take a break from it. And it's like, you just have a better run. You actually enjoy the experience of like, kind of like getting back to nature and like living in the moment versus being distracted, trying to multitask throughout the day.
Yeah, well, that leads into a very good point about the back to nature aspect of the race, where, most people, 90% of the people coming to the race are living in cities. So they're overexposed to pollution, whether it's, the stress of traffic noise, might be light pollution, it could be noise pollution, but nevertheless, it's a lot of pollution in their cities. And we're letting them get away from that for a week. And the digital detox aspect means that they're also getting back to nature as well. So they experience that in a way which is getting away from their comfort blanket. So they're not getting the normal comforts at the expected home. But that's part of being back to nature. They suddenly realize that, wow, they can actually do away with all the modern conveniences, and it's good for the soul, because They're not relying on things that make their life comfortable. They're actually getting uncomfortable for a week, and that really makes them appreciate life in other aspects.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I mentioned it before on, I don't remember which episode of the podcast, but a lot of people last year mentioned that to me, just like the whole like uncomfortable part of Grand to Grand, like made them appreciate little things in life. Like, oh, like a lemon water with ice cubes. Like that's the greatest thing on the planet, where like it's something you could just make at home in like 5 seconds and not think twice about.
Mm.
But when
Mm.
you're in the middle of like the sand dunes and it's 100 degrees or something, and you don't have ice, you don't have a fresh lemon there, like you really learn to appreciate these little things in life that you just definitely take for granted.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, people in their normal lives, people, you know, have taken way too many things for granted. Calories are cheap. People have comfortable houses. They have air conditioning. They have heating. They've got everything, and I think it's important for them to, get out of those comfort zones and live again. And so, coming to the Grand to Grand Ultra is a great way for them to just jump straight into that, and they can't get away with it. I mean, they're out there for the week. They've signed up for it, and it's not like they can just walk away from it. They're going to go through it.
Yeah, they're definitely not going to call Uber Eats or something to get a pizza delivered to camp at night.
Well, they could, but they'd get disqualified. So,
well, then on top of that, I don't think there's even is Uber Eats in Kanab or
No.
the Arizona Strip.
yeah, exactly. That would completely confound the Uber Eats driver.
Yeah, I don't know if they would be able to navigate to any of the campsites. But I do think though that like being outside and like, I don't know, like we were just talking about previously, but just having these conversations in camp is really fun. Like with the campfires at night, like even though like I'm kind of like a fly on the wall half the time at these events, like filming and stuff, like going over to the campfire at night, like at Elephant Butte, for example, is such a magical experience. You're out there and you can see Zion in the distance. You're by this beautiful sandstone cliff and people are just hanging out by the campfire. And everyone's just talking, like you're talking under the stars next to this campfire, and like no one's on their phones because they can't be on their phones. And it's really, it's cool to see these other people interact. But then also like I've made a lot of good friends that way too, just by like talking to people around the campfire. And it's like, it really is the lost art of communication.
Yeah, no, that's definitely it. And we really want to give people that experience for a whole week. And I've said before, today about back to nature. We really want people to get out onto the course and have a sense of achievement day after day. So they're going to be doing this for 7 days, and it's like a mini race every day, making sure they get into camp before the cutoff time. But the euphoria they feel by that achievement each day, and doing it using their own wits, is something seen to be believed, because it's a huge achievement, or a huge sense of achievement, when they cross that finish line every day. It's not like just one finish line, but it's day after day, and that makes them feel really empowered. We find that by the end of the week, not only do people have a great sense of achievement, but they become even more empowered in their lives because they've been able to do something. And that's another reason why we've never introduced electronic trackers into our race, because we don't like people to feel the comfort blanket of having a tracker attached to them. We don't want them to feel like at any moment they can just give up and press a button and somebody comes and gets them. We want them to get out there, and if it wasn't safe, we wouldn't have them out there in the first place. But we've got a great system where we're monitoring where everyone is. We know where people are at all times. We're checking at them at all the checkpoints. So and we know the course like the back of our hand. So we know where everyone is. It may not appear that way. If you're out there, you could be feeling like, you're on your own, but we're keeping a close eye on you. But that's not the experience. The experience you're getting is that you are out in nature, out in a huge wilderness. And you might be worried at times. I'm am I on the course? Am I going to make it? And so your sense of achievement when you get to the finish line each day is even greater because you had those moments where you were a bit worried about whether you'd gone off course or whether you were going to make it or not. And so it makes the achievement feel even greater. But we're not. If you had added technology to it so that people felt, oh well, at any point in time I can just press a button and somebody's going to turn up in a 4-wheel drive and take me off the course, you're going to miss something. We're not trying to. We don't want to take that thrill away from you. We want you to have that thrill. It's does that make sense, Derek?
Yeah, yeah. It's making me think about how, like, I don't know if you've probably experienced this in your lifetime, but like, say you have like a minor car problem, and you could just take it to the shop and pay the like $1,000 or whatever it is to get something fixed, or you do it yourself. You buy the tools and maybe you spend a couple hours doing it. Like that sense of achievement it's amazing. It's like maybe it's not something overly complex, but doing it yourself, you feel very like fulfilled and validated. But you could also take the easy way out, and maybe, like, I'm not saying like don't ever do this. I took my truck to the shop the other day, but like when you do something yourself, you just feel so, like you're saying, empowered. And it's like, now what else can I do? Like maybe I could do something else on my truck, or maybe I could do something else like when it comes to an adventure.
Yeah, and so when people do the Grand to Grand Ultra, and they make they make it every day, they achieve this. Just think of how that empowers them, not only in other races or orienteering or going out to nature. They could say, well, I've just crossed 30 miles across the desert just looking for markers out there. If I can do that here, then there's other stuff I can do. You're pushing yourself beyond the sort of comfort blanket boundaries that you gave yourself before. And you tend to find it empowers you in other aspects of your life. So, it gives you the guts to go and ask your boss for a raise, or maybe you've been in a job you don't like. It gives you the courage to go and leave your job and do something else. So it's a very powerful thing when you finish the race at the end of the week.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think like doing hard things on your own, like obviously like you're safe at Grand to Grand. You're not going to die or anything out there, or get lost even, but like just doing something on your own is the most empowering thing you can do. And it really does affect your life like in a very positive way. And I think this is kind of the cool thing about like ultra running and endurance sports in general is like a lot of people may sign up not knowing if they can complete the distance. But then when you do, you're like, okay, like I can do hard things now. Like I'm not as soft as I thought I was. Like I'm a strong person. I can do all these things. It's cool to see people like change even in the course of the week, going from like being very timid about like I'm going to run a marathon or a 50K or a 50 miler every day for this week. And then they do it and they're like, oh, I should do this again, or I should do something else hard because I don't know. They want to challenge themselves. It's awesome to see.
Yeah. And I think it'll be interesting this year because we've got a few elite runners who have done, have got amazing track records running 100-mile races or longer, and achieved great things. They're champions. They've got first place. They've achieved records on distances, etc. But in most cases, they've never done a stage race, so it's a new challenge for them, and they're getting out of their comfort zone to do this, and we love that because it'll be interesting to see how they cope with the new challenges that they've got. And that's one of the things that's why they signed up for it, because it's something new for them. It's not just another 100-mile race that they may or may not win, but it's something very different.
That's another aspect of running that I really like. And I know I'm getting a little off topic here, but it's like, even if you are really good at, say, running 100 milers, it's like a stage race is completely different than running a 100-mile or even just like a 50K or a marathon. It's like, there's so many more things that go into it. And it's always fun to just try something new and something different and challenge yourself in a new way.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Colin. That was fun to talk about all this stuff. Like I'm honestly looking forward to the week of being in Kanab and just like detoxing from my phone myself. Cause every night when I look at my screen time, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I spend way too much time on my phone, whether it's for work or for just personal reasons. And it is really nice to spend that time with people, the volunteers and the runners and everybody at Grand to Grand. So I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Well, it's one of the thrills that we have each year is when we see everyone on the last day and they've just had that experience of the digital detox. So we look forward to doing that year after year.
Awesome, Colin. Well, thanks for taking the time again. I know you're a busy man and it's getting late over where you are, so I'll let you head out.
Thank you very much, Derek. We'll see you later.